Welcome to class number 4 in the Sefer, the original in the Hebrew, Sefer Sheva Mitzvot HaShem, which we're currently in volume 1 in the Preface. Mavoi, we're on page 29. Section Gimel here deals with the source of where the Rambam gets it from, that if a non-Jew, a ben Noach, refuses to accept the 7 Noahide commandments, Yehareg, he shall be put to death. Very harsh. So he wants to deal with over here what is exactly the source of Maimonides of the Rambam. So let's back up a little bit. We just began. We're actually went through the 4 mitzvahs that they bring down over here to start understanding where we find such a concept. So we may as well see it again inside, and we read and we translate and we try to explain with the help of Hashem everything inside. So we're on top of page 29. We need to analyze, to delve deeply, and try to figure out what is the source for that which the Rambam writes, and we quote, Tziva Moshe Rabbeinu l'chayf chuli v'im lo yekabel yehareg. That Moses, our teacher, has commanded to force, etc. And if he will not accept, if the non-Jew will not accept yehareg, he shall be put to death. Minayin shene'eragi mishum zeh. From where do we see, where do we find that they are to be killed, to be put to death for this? Venireli. So this is the author of the Sheva Mitzvot HaShem, Rabbi Moshe Weiner speaking. Venireli, and it appears to me, the Rambam loy mitkein mehapsukim shetziva Hashem al Yisrael v'negel Shiva umois Canaan. That the Rambam learns this out. He derives the fact that a non-Jew that doesn't accept the 7 mitzvahs shall be put to death from the various verses where Hashem commands the Jewish people with regards to the 7 nations that were occupying the Holy Land, the land of Israel, which at the time was known as Eretz Canaan. And the 7 nations, which are all various Canaanite families. And therefore they're all known with the general term of Canaan, but they're 7 nations. And the verse states, Ki v'yacha Hashem, when Hashem will bring you, v'noshal goyim rabbi miponecha, and he will remove many nations from before you, Shiva goyim 7 nations, v'yikisom hacharim tacharim oisom, l'sichres lambris, v'loisichonem, v'loisischaten bom v'gemer. You shall cut them down, destroy them, uproot them, do not make a covenant with them, do not allow them to live in the land, and do not intermarry with them. Yesh beparasha zoi talut mitzvahs. So in this section in the Torah, with these verses, there are a total of 4 mitzvahs, 4 commandments. And we list. Aleph, mitzvah 1. Hacharem oisam. Destroy them. Laharoig shivas ha'umois. To kill the 7 nations. According to the conditions that the Rambam delineated in the 6th chapter of the Laws of Kings here. Remember, the Laws of Kings are the last of the entire Rambam, the entire magnum opus of his Yad HaChazak of Mishneh Torah. So in the 14th and final book, in the very last section, in the very last laws, total there are 83 laws, we said. The last one is the Laws of Kings, and that is where the Rambam, towards the end, deals with the 7 Noahide commandments. And of course, we have the final 2 chapters, which deal with Mashiach, known in several editions as the Laws of Melech HaMashiach, chapters 11 and 12. So back to chapter 6, where the Rambam is speaking about how a Jewish king is to come in and conquer the land of Israel and so forth. So there the Rambam tells us all the various conditions of how the nations of Canaan were to be put to death. Base. There is a prohibition, a negative commandment. We are not permitted to make any type of a treaty or a covenant with them. As the Rambam explains in the laws of idolatry, that's all the way towards the very beginning of the Rambam, in chapter 10. Gimel, commandment number 3. Lo yisechonim. Do not, according to one interpretation, allow them any residence or permanent residence. As is explained in the Rambam's laws of Avodah Zarah, over there in chapter 10, that this prohibition includes that it is forbidden for the Jewish people to allow the non-Jews to have any residence, to own any real estate in the land of Israel. It's forbidden for us to have mercy or compassion or pity on them. That's all included in Loi Sechanim. And finally, Dalit number 4. It is forbidden for a Jew to marry anyone from these 7 nations. As the Rambam explains clearly in the laws of forbidden relations, chapter 12. And that's what we're up to. So far we have one section in the Torah which speaks about the conduct and the relationship that the Jewish nation should have towards the 7 nations of Canaan, and basically all the things that we shouldn't do. And you break it down into 4 commandments. V'das HaRambam, and the Rambam's opinion, De'af alpi, that even though Shatera tzivsa mitzvahs elu befeirush b'negel l'shiva umois, although it is indeed true that the Torah explicitly is commanding us these 4 above-mentioned commandments with regards to the 7 nations. That's what the verse is talking about. However, hu hadin l'chol goy oivei de'elilim, the Rambam holds that the same thing would apply to any non-Jew that is an idolater. He doesn't have to be a member or a relative or a descendant of any one of those 7 nations. He could be from any one of the other nations. Remember, there are 70 nations. So he could be from any one of the other 63 nations, so to say. And he has no blood from any of the Canaanite, and he doesn't have any ancestors that resided in the land of Israel, and so forth. However, if he's a non-Jew that's an idolater, these mitzvahs apply for the Jew towards him. And therefore, Pasak Bilches Avodah Zarah Perek Yud. The Rambam therefore rules in the laws of idolatry, chapter 10, the halav, that the negative commandment, the prohibition, lo yisichres lambris, of this verse that we just quoted, that you shall not make a covenant with them. Now, clearly, in the simple reading, that verse is talking about the 7 nations. The Rambam clearly holds that verse is to be applied in a legal sense, halachically, to any nation that is idolatrous, that worships anything other than God. That it is forbidden for the Jew to make a treaty, to make a covenant with that nation that is idolatrous. In other words, the Jew is not allowed on any level to permit or to allow idolatry. V'chein, and likewise, Isru lo yisechanim, another one of the 4 prohibitions, not to allow them to own real estate or to have a residence. Nemar, according to the Rambam again, this prohibition was stated al kol oived avodah zarah, for anyone that is an idolater. Shloi nitain loy chania bekarka, that we shall not give him any type of residence in property, any real estate property, can't have a house or a field or anything like that. Sheva Mitzvot, until he accepts upon himself the 7 commandments, which of course means to denounce idolatry, but not just that, all 7. So that's how the Rambam is learning it. So even though when you'll open up the Chumash, the Bible, and you'll read the verses that we quoted, it's clearly in the simple, straightforward interpretation and understanding applies to the 7 nations in the land of Israel, the Canaanite. However, the Rambam's understanding is that commandment on a legal level applies just the same to any nation that is idolatrous. And now in the brackets. V'chein halav, and likewise the prohibition, the negative commandment, from the book of Exodus, chapter 23, verse 33. L'yesh v'ba'artzecha v'gomer, they shall not dwell in your land. Einay rak l'zayin u'mois ha'Kanaani. Again, it does not only apply to the 7 Canaanite nations, but rather to anyone that worships Avodah Zarah. As is explained by the Rambam in the laws of idolatry, the end of chapter 10, or in the Rambam's Sefer HaMitzvahs, we've mentioned that one of the many books that the Rambam Maimonides authored, aside for that which is most famous, known as the Rambam, and the official name he gave it is Mishneh Torah, and it's commonly called Yad HaChazaka, any one of those 3 titles, which is his halacha, his legal ruling. And as we mentioned, it has 14 books, and he goes through every single one of the 613 mitzvahs with all of its laws, and it has about 1,000 chapters. Aside for that, he wrote what's called Sefer HaMitzvot, one book which he lists all 613 commandments, and he devotes, generally speaking, about 1 paragraph for every commandment of the 613. First he goes through all the 248 positive commandments, and then all the 365 negative commandments. Each commandment, he tells you what it is, and then he quotes the verse from the Torah, where in the Chumash, in the Bible, it says that mitzvah, and then he'll tell you the sources in the oral law, in the Talmud, where it's discussed. And he'll give you sometimes a line or 2, sometimes a bit more, just to tell you what the mitzvah is about. Very, very brief description of the mitzvah. In a certain sense, his Sefer HaMitzvahs serves as an introduction to his magnum opus of the Mishneh Torah. So, in Sefer HaMitzvahs, negative commandment, number 51, is this prohibition of not allowing them, and I say them in quotations, not allowing them to reside in our land. And who are the them? So there too the Rambam explains it's not just the 7 nations of Canaan, but it's any nation that is worshipping Avodah Zarah. And in the laws of forbidden relations, Mevaer, the Rambam explains, that the prohibition of intermarriage for a Jew to marry a non-Jew is with any nation. Whether it's one of the 7 Canaanite nations, or whether it's any one of the nations of the world, as long as the nation is not Jewish that we're talking about, it's not from the Jewish people, it's forbidden for a Jew to marry them. So the prohibition of intermarriage for a Jew is not limited to the 7 nations. Anyone who's not Jewish, a Jew can't marry. And again, that would be by extension of what the Torah says, don't marry any of those Canaanim. And yet we apply it to everybody. So the Rambam, in a legal sense, is taking that which the Torah seems to be specific about the 7 nations of the Canaanite, and he's broadening it and says legally that mitzvah, those mitzvahs, all 4 apply across the board. K'moi kein, likewise, Sofer HaRambam, the Rambam holds, he maintains, Shamitzvah Rishayna, the Parasha Hachrim Tachrimim, Noahides b'chol uma ha'ovid akum. V'chein l'chol yochid mehem. Okay, so here's the segue. Now that we've explained what we did until now, and it seems pretty fair and pretty clear that at least the Rambam holds what we just said, and what we just said didn't seem too extreme and didn't seem too difficult to understand in the words of the Rambam. And it seems like that's what the Rambam holds. Now, he says, well, likewise, there is the first of the 4 mitzvahs, which was actually a positive commandment. The 3, number 2, 3, and 4, those were all negatives. Not to make a treaty with them, not to allow them to reside in the land, and not to intermarry with them. But the first one was a positive commandment, to destroy them, to kill the 7 nations. So, if the last 3, we said from various places in the Rambam, apply to any and every nation that's idolatrous, so too, when it comes to the first commandment of destroy them, that applies to any nation that worships idolatry. And for that matter, for any individual, for any non-Jew, nothing to do with the land of Canaan, nothing to do with the 7 Canaanite nations, any non-Jew from any nation who worships Avodah Zarah. V'lav davka mishiva umais, and not necessarily from the 7 nations. Ubir mitzvah zoi, page 30, and the explanation of this mitzvah, kfianira milchis melachim perek vav, vilchis Avodah Zarah perek yud, as it appears from the Rambam's Laws of Kings, chapter 6, and from his Laws of Idolatry, chapter 10. And that is as follows. She'im yodeinu takifa, that if our hand, referring to the Jewish people, if our hand is strong, if we have the governing ability, niftach lahem b'shalom, we, the Jewish people, should open up and approach them with peace, offering them peace, namely, she'kablu Sheva Mitzvot HaShem, that they should accept upon themselves to keep the 7 Noahide commandments. Not just the 7 nations. Anyone who we can, any nation that we have control over, if it would be such a situation, the Jewish people then should offer them peace. Namely, we're offering you to keep the 7 commandments. Kloimar, this means to say, nichpein be'iyum, we will force them by threat. Shim lo yekablum yehargu, that if they don't accept the 7, they will be put to death. V'imenu mekablim nahargem, and if indeed they don't accept it, we will kill them. That's the peace that we're offering them. So we're coming and telling them that, would you like to live? Would you like to have a good life? Would you like to live in peace with us? Then you need to accept these 7 God-given commandments which apply to all of the non-Jewish world, to the entire world. If you accept them, wonderful. That's our offer. If not, we will kill you. And then any nation or any individual that refuses to accept them should be put to death. Ve'omnam vada ikar mitzvah is hachrim tacharimim nemar davka bezainu meisaknani chulu. True, the primary commandment of destroying them is stated with regards to these 7 Canaanite nations. We're not denying that. We just got through saying it applies to anyone, not only a nation, but even an individual that worships Avodah Zarah. But obviously, the straightforward and primary mitzvah applies specifically to these 7 Canaanite nations. Because we, the Jewish people, are commanded to go out to war and to kill the 7 Canaanite nations. And we, the Jewish people, are commanded, we have a mandate to pursue and to destroy those 7 Canaanite nations, and at the very least, to expel them from the land of Israel. Ve'ein zu reshus livchar im nirtze bekach eloi, el mitzvah, el milchemes mitzvah. And this is not something which is optional, where the Jewish people can choose whether we want to fulfill this or not. In other words, it's not that we have a right to threaten the 7 nations of Canaan, to become law-abiding 7 mitzvahs observers, or to kill them. It's not an optional. It's a mandatory, a commandment. And within the laws of kings, within the laws of wars, so there are different types of wars that the Jewish king can take the people out to. And one of them is called Milchemes Reshus. Milchemes Reshus basically means it's optional. Like, for example, if he wants to expand the borders and get more territory. So that's optional. And the king then, there's a process of how he comes to that decision, and to get the approval through a prophet, and so forth. But then, there's something called Milchemes Mitzvah. Milchemes Mitzvah means an obligation and an outright commandment, and that would be to conquer the land and to get rid of the 7 Canaanite nations. Masha'ein Kain, which is not the case though, She'ar ha'umayis, all the rest of the nations of the world besides those 7, Ein anu chayavim lirdef achareihem. We, the Jewish people, are not obligated to go chase after them and pursue them and find them, and to wage a war with them. The Jew's not obligated to do that. So in other words, if I know that, well, there's a country that has a nation over there that I could control, and I have reason to suspect that they're not keeping the 7. Well, let's go. Campaign. Let's go there and threaten them that if they don't accept the 7, we kill them because we have the ability to do so. No, that we're not obligated to do. In the land of Israel, the land of Canaan, the 7 Canaanite nations, we must. Other nations or individuals in the world, the Jew doesn't have to go after them. Ella, rather, if we, the Jewish people, choose, it's our choice, to go after them and to wage this war of reshus, this optional war, so then we have to start off and open up to them with this peace offering, as is the case in every war. Even a milchemes mitzvah, even the war which is obligatory, and it's a commandment, even that we have to begin and send them the message of peace. And then if this nation does accept to keep the 7, if they accept misim, shibud, the Sheva Mitzvot, if they accept to pay taxes to the Jewish government and to be under the rule of the Jewish government, to be subjugated, and to keep the 7, then we accept them. That's our peace offering. V'im lav, if they reject this, anu mitzuvin b'milchama lareg mehem kol hazcharim. So we, the Jewish people, again, we didn't have to go out to war in the first place, but now that we are going to war, there's rules. And the rules are we have to begin with offering them peace, namely, to be under the Jewish jurisdiction and to accept the 7. If they refuse to accept the 7, so then we have a mitzvah to go there and to kill all of the males. And this is not the mitzvah of destroy them that we mentioned in the list of 4. This is not the first of those 4 mitzvahs of destroying the nations. Ella, rather, prat mi mitzvah cheres. It's a detail of a different mitzvah, different commandment. As is explained in the Rambam, chapter 6 of the Laws of Kings, and in the book called Sefer HaChinuch. Sefer HaChinuch, similar to what the Rambam did, he also compiled all 613 mitzvahs. He did it in a different order, and in certain cases, he and the Rambam and the Chinuch differ. Everybody agrees there's 613 commandments for the Jewish people in total. There's no other opinion. That's in the Talmud, in Tractate Makos, and there's one opinion, and there's no dispute, and everybody agrees there's 613. But exactly what the 613, that's open for debate, And for the most part, of course, everybody agrees on what they are. But here and there are some of those that count mitzvahs, such as the Rambam and the Chinuch and others. Well, they'll come to 613 because they'll include this and they'll exclude that. And they'll say, no, that's not a commandment, and this is, and so forth, technically. So the Sefer HaChinuch, in his mitzvah number 527, he explains this idea of killing the nations when you go to war. So it's not part of Hachrim Tachrimim. So he says, true, that mitzvah of destroying them is only for the Canaanite nations, the 7 Canaanite nations. And that's obligatory. And that the Jewish people don't have the option of being nice and say, well, if you want, we'll let you stay here, and we'll mind our own business, and you mind your own business, and here's the conditions. No, that's already a treaty. You can't do that. So those 7 nations, we have a mitzvah to get rid of them. Whereas anyone else in the world, it would be optional. But if we do choose to go, so then we have to give them this option of accepting the 7, or else kill them. But when it comes to this war of mitzvah, this obligatory war against the 7 nations of Canaan, we are commanded to completely destroy them. Anoshim, noshim, vataf. Men, women, and children. For the verse states with regards to those 7 nations, do not allow to live any living soul. So when it comes to the other nations, when we instigate the war in a permissible fashion, and we, the Jewish people, offer them this peace, namely, you can be under our jurisdiction and accept the 7 Noahide commandments. If they deny and say no, and we then go out to war, we, the Jewish people, have a mitzvah to kill all the males, not the women. As opposed to the 7 nations, where the mitzvah is to kill them all out. Nimtza. So, comes out as follows. Shebeshiva ha'umais, that with regards to the 7 Canaanite nations, anu mitzuvin lacharimam, we, the Jewish people, are commanded to destroy them. And we will not allow these idolaters to remain in our land under any circumstance. Which is not the case, though, with regards to all the rest of the nations of the world. We, the Jewish people, are not commanded to go make a war against them. And even if we do choose to go out and wage a voluntary war against them, we are commanded to only kill the males. But we will take the women and the children as slaves, as captives. We don't have to kill them. As is explicit in the Torah, in the book of Devarim, chapter 20, verses 10 through 18. The idea of going to war and taking the women and children as slaves, as captives. That does not apply to the Canaanite. Anyone from the 7 Canaanite nations, it is forbidden for the Jews to take them. Now, killing the males in this optional war, this is obligatory, and it's part of the rules, part of the Jewish laws of war. So if the Jewish people chose, it's an option, chose on their own to go wage this war against a particular country, which they didn't have to do in the first place. However, they do need to kill out all the males that don't accept the 7 mitzvahs. Kloimar, this means to say, it is forbidden for us to take the male adults as captives. But from this point, if they do agree and accept to keep the 7 Noahide commandments, then we allow them to live. Again, unlike the 7 nations where we are commanded to destroy them, nothing to do with what they do accept or don't accept, we cannot allow them to live. However, a woman from any one of the other nations, not one of the 7 Canaanite nations, a woman that we take as a captive, we will force her to keep the 7 mitzvahs b'koyach, by force, tishar shibud avdus, like any other slavery or any other subjugation, any other matter which we will force them to be slaves. So part of that is we'll force them to keep the 7. But if she refuses to accept the 7, even though she's a woman and she's not one of the 7 Canaanite nations, and we took her as a captive and she refuses to accept the 7, of course we kill her. As the Rambam clearly writes, with regards to a slave that was acquired from the non-Jews, or the Yifas Toyar, which is the case of the non-Jewish woman at war that the Jewish soldier saw, and then he brings her back, and all that. So too over there, the Jew has the option to keep her, and if he chooses to keep her, so of course she must accept upon herself to at least keep the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach, and if not, she's put to death. We're on the 3rd line of page 31. 2nd paragraph. V'zen nilmad miklal mitzvahs hachareim tacharimim. And this is derived from the general mitzvah commandment of destroy them, which again we said is speaking about the 7 nations of Canaan. Laharoig, to kill. Kol mishlei kabel olav sheva mitzvahs, to kill anyone who will not accept upon himself to keep the 7. But it's not that the primary mitzvah of killing anyone who doesn't accept the 7 was said about the other nations as well. And therefore, the details of destroying them, of excommunicating them, is not the same as it is by the 7 Canaanite nations. Kigoying, for example, so like he just explained previously. An example would be a woman from the other nations that accepts upon herself to keep the 7. So her, we would let her live. Whereas the 7 Canaanite nations, we have a mitzvah to destroy them. So it's irrelevant. The women and the children need to be killed. So we see that the mitzvah of destroying them is primarily about the 7 nations of the Canaanite. Whereas all the rest of the nations of the world and all the other wars that the Jewish people wage, there is the concept of killing anyone who doesn't keep the 7, who doesn't accept to keep the 7, but it's not that we just have a blanket rule, just kill everybody. No, that's with regards to the 7. Now he's going to ask on this approach. So far, we've established the source, the logic of how the Rambam comes to this ruling that any individual, any one non-Jew who will not accept upon himself to keep the 7 should be put to death. Question. That which is written in the Talmud tractate Avodah Zarah 26b, the akum ein mailin ve'ein meiridin, that an idolater we do not bring him up, nor do we lower him. Meaning, if a Jew, there's certain people where a Jew has a mitzvah to bring up and to save. If they're in a life-threatening situation, so he has to help them. Then the other extreme would be that you actually have to push them down. And then the neutral or middle ground, so to say, would be you do not help them, nor do you harm them. So, giving the theoretical or the classical case, if there's someone who's hanging from the cliff for his dear life, and he's holding on over there, so mylene means bring them up. That means you pick them up, you reach there, you throw them the rope, whatever it is to save them. Moiridin would mean you go over there and you step on their hands so that they let go and fall to their death. Loi mylin v'loi moiridin means you do nothing and you're passive. You don't harm them, you don't help them. So the Talmud says that the approach that the Jew has to have towards the akum, the idolater, is ein ma'alin. The Jew should not help them up. Ve'ein moiridin, nor should he help them down or push them down. Mashma, so from that statement in the Talmud is implied shein hargim ma'asam stam, that we don't kill them. What do you mean? This guy's an idolater, and I have an opportunity to kill him. So why don't I kill him? According to the Rambam, seemingly, I should push him down. If I could, I can get away with that. Or at the very least, I should tell him, are you accepting upon yourself right now to keep the 7 Noahide commandments? If you say yes, I will save your life. If you say no, I will actually be the one to cut the branch so that you can fall. No, Talmud doesn't say that. Why not? He's an idolater. Why don't I kill him? Piresh Rambam. So the Rambam explained. Hilchas Avodah Zarah, Perek Yud, in the laws of Avodah Zarah, of idolatry, chapter 10. Dehainu shaloi b'shas milchama. That is speaking about when it's not during the time of war. Kloimar, this means to say, Afal b'shabal yadeinu efsharus mikris lahargoi. Even though it came to our hand, to the Jewish people's hand, it came the opportunity to kill a non-Jew, to kill an idolater. We don't do that. No, don't kill him. He's not waging a war with us. So if it's an idolater who is categorically, clearly transgressing the 7, he is an idolater. But it's not the time of war. He didn't attack us, and we're not attacking him. So then we don't have a right to kill him, even though the Jew could get away with it. But if it's during the time of war, however the war came about, even if the Jewish people chose to wage this optional war, but now it's war. Now, he's saying that when the Rambam says it's a time of war, it's not limited to necessarily mean that it's literally a time of a war in the sense of two nations fighting with each other. Meaning to say, what would you mean literally time of war? That we went through the proper procedure, and we, the Jewish people, sent them an opening peaceful message. We offered them to accept and pay taxes and be under our jurisdiction and accept the 7 mitzvahs. And we then go out to fight against them, as is explained in the Laws of Kings, chapter 6. Ella, rather, what we mean by war over here, kol she'adenu takifa aleihem. Any time that as a whole, the Jewish body, the governing body of the Jewish people, is strong and governing over these non-Jews. Then, loy naniach lem laver b'seichenu, we will not allow them to pass through our land, achikablu Sheva Mitzvot until they accept the 7, and we will force them up until and including the point of killing them that they shall do so. But it doesn't mean that a Jew, even if he can get away with it, and nobody would know, he has no right to kill the idolater. That's not what it means. It means it's a time of war. What does time of war mean? That it's in our jurisdiction, and we have the governing power, and there's no one to stop us, and we have the ability to kill someone who's not accepting. That's a different story. So then, according to the Rambam, that would be the case where we kill them. But otherwise, the Talmud in Avodah Zarah, that's speaking about a regular case of an individual who sees an idolater, and he could kill him and he could save him, and therefore he's supposed to be passive and don't save him and don't kill him. So that is how he is explaining the Rambam. V'das Sefer HaChinuch. Now the opinion of, again, this above mentioned Sefer HaChinuch. This time it's in Mitzvah 93, as he references in the footnote, is as follows. Afal pishakarvo das Rambam. Although the opinion of the Chinuch is very close to the Rambam's opinion that we just explained, the maskim, that the Chinuch agrees, shachiluk bein shiva umois lishar umois oivdei kechavim, who he agrees of this distinction that the Rambam makes, that the difference between the 7 Canaanite nations and all the rest of the idolatrous nations is the bezayin umois anu mitzuvin lo yirisha min haaretz ulachrimam. When it comes to the 7 nations, we, the Jewish people, are commanded to actively and forcefully rid the land of them, and to destroy them. And we will not allow those idolaters to remain in our land under any circumstances. Which is not the case, though, with the rest of the nations of the world. We are not commanded to make a war against them. What would be a practical difference? If a Jew found one of the members of the 7 nations, even if it's not during wartime, he just sees the guy, he just happens to know this guy is one of the 7 nations, and there's no war going on, everything's peaceful. It is a positive commandment for the Jew to kill that person because he's a member of he's a descendant of the 7 nations of Canaan. And it says, don't allow any of them to live, man, woman, or child. However, if it's any one of the other nations, and it's not during a time of war, then we cannot harm them. And for that matter, likewise, Daitoi Rambam, the Sefer HaChinuch also holds like the Rambam. The Gimel Lavin Elu, that these 3 above mentioned prohibitions. Remember, we mentioned at the beginning there's 4 commandments. The first one is to destroy them, and then we had 3 negative ones. So we just said that the Sefer HaChinuch agrees that this positive commandment of destroying them, so for the Canaanim it applies all the time, anytime, even if it's not time of war, as opposed to the other nations. Likewise, the 3 prohibitions, the negative commandments, namely, the prohibition of Isur Krisas Bris, not to make a covenant or a treaty with them, which is Mitzvah 93 in the Chinuch. Isur Chitun Ba'umois, the prohibition against intermarriage with any of the nations, Mitzvah Tov Chav Zayin, which is Mitzvah 427, and Lo Yisechonim, not to allow them to have residence in the land of Israel, Mitzvah Tov Chavav, Mitzvah 426. Koi al kol umma oivdei avodah zara, v'lo yirak b'zayin umis. According to the Chinuch, he also holds that those 3 commandments apply to any idolatrous nation in the world, and not only the 7 Canaanite nations. V'chein b'milchemes hareshus, and likewise, when it comes to an optional war that the Jewish people choose to go to, which is Mitzvah Tov Kuf Chav Zayin, Mitzvah 527, Sefer Rambam, he also holds there like the Rambam, the Poischin B'Shalom, that we have to begin and open up with peace, Begimel Tnoim, with the 3 conditions, Koilo Atnai Shekablu Sheva Mitzvahs, which includes, of course, the condition that they accept the 7 mitzvahs. So they have to pay taxes, they have to accept us as the governing body, they now are under our ruling, and they have to accept to keep the 7 mitzvahs. Aval, however, Beha, in the following, Ein Sefer HaChinuch Maskem Rambam. The Sefer HaChinuch, in this particular detail that we're about to say, does not agree with the Rambam. And that is, He does not hold the yesh mitzvah hacharem tachrimim lahareg nachri oived avodah zarah chutz lamilchama. He does not agree with the Rambam's conclusion that there's a mitzvah for the Jewish people to kill a non-Jew that is an idolater if it's outside of war. That which we do kill him in the time of war, that's only because of the rules of war. In other words, it's not that really the Jew should kill anyone who's an idolater. However, if he's not from the 7 nations, you can only kill him if it's time of war. That's one way. But Sefer Chinuch says, no, that's not the way it is. If he's not from the 7 nations, really, you're not supposed to kill him. But if it's a time of war, then you do. Very different approach. So in general, he agrees with the Rambam. However, the bottom line, that anyone who doesn't accept to keep the 7 mitzvahs shall be put to death, that it seems clear that the Sefer Chinuch does not hold like the Rambam. Ushar Harishoinim, and all the rest of the early codifiers, meaning the Rambam's contemporaries, and in brackets, Haravid, Tosfos, Smag, V'Hatur. All right, those are 4 leading authoritative opinions, which are Rambam's contemporaries. All 4 of them, as he references in footnotes 42, 43, 44, and 45, where you can find it, Cholkim ala Rambam. They clearly disagree and argue on the Rambam. Bebiur daled mitzvahs elu, in the explanation of these 4 mitzvahs that we're mentioning. The Soivrim, and they all hold that the commandment that the Jewish people were given about these 4 mitzvahs only applies with regards to the 7 Canaanite nations. With the exception of not allowing them to live in the land of Israel, as Tosfos explains, that would apply to others as well. But except for that, just as the verse states clearly that this is with regards to 7 nations, they say that is the legal ruling, and they don't extend it as the Rambam does. All right. So in all fairness, we're just trying to state everything. We're trying to understand the Rambam's approach and his source, which we explain the source. Not everyone agrees with that. That's fine. But we're explaining what's the Rambam's source for saying that they should be put to death. Makar noisaf l'dasa Rambam. An additional source for the Rambam's opinion, Efshar lahavi masifrei. We can bring down from the words of the Talmudic sages, known as the Sifrei. That's the compilation of the oral tradition on the book of Deuteronomy. So in chapter 20, verse 18, the verse says, "Leman asher loy yilamdu eschem lasos," so that they, the nations of the Canaanite that are residing there, should not teach you to do them. In other words, we are not to learn from their evil, destructive, corrupt ways. Milamed, says the Sifrei, this teaches us Shimoisim tshuva ein haragim, that if they do tshuva, we're talking about the 7 nations. If they do teshuva, then they're not to be put to death. Because the Torah is giving us the reason for going out to war and for killing them. Because they would be a negative influence. But if they repent, if they do teshuva and return to Hashem, we do not kill them. At kan l'shoinoi, that is, up to there is the quote from the Sifri. But what can we obviously derive from that? So if they don't repent, they do get put to death. Kloimar, this means, Hatam sheneragim, the reason why they're killed, kilekiblu sheva mitzvahs, because they did not accept the 7 mitzvahs. That's what it boils down to. If they accept the 7 mitzvahs, good, and they don't get killed, they deserve to live. If they don't accept the 7 mitzvahs, then no good, and they're put to death. V'dasa Rambam, Hilchas Melachim Perek Vav, the opinion of the Rambam Again, the Laws of Kings, chapter 6. The pasuk zeh, this verse in Devarim 20:18, Vasifrei, and this interpretation on that verse of the Sifrei. Mayri gam b'milchemes hareshus. According to the Rambam, it's not limited to the 7 Canaanite nations, as you might think when you just read that verse. The Rambam again extends it to all nations, even to a war which is not obligatory, but it's an optional war. Milchemes reshus. We, the Jewish people, are not permitted to make peace with them as long as they don't accept the 7 commandments. If they don't accept it, they have to be put to death. So one can say, no one asked the Jewish people to go out to war with them. Why are you going to there? Why are you looking for trouble? We're allowed to. That's optional. We want to expand our borders. We want to take over more. That's fine. It's not part of the promised land. That's okay. It's not part of the Holy Land. That's all right. Fine. But now here's the rules. After the Supreme Court, of course the king, and with the approval of Hashem through the prophet, everything was done properly. Once we now are allowed to go out to this optional war, and we chose to go out, then there's rules. Then Hashem says, you choose to do that? That's fine, I give you permission. But now, the rules are, you have to offer them, amongst other things, to accept the 7 Noahide commandments. And if they refuse, you have to kill them. You didn't have to go out to war in the first place. It's not a milchemes mitzvah, it's a milchemes reshus. It's optional. But you chose to, then here's how it has to be. Umikan shekol nachri she'em mekabel sheva mitzvahs neherag. So from here, again, we can deduce, and this would be the Rambam's explanation, that any non-Jew that refuses to accept the 7 mitzvahs is to be put to death. Achdas hasmag deinuraya misifrei zeh. However, the smag, which is one of the Rishonim that we said that disagrees with the Rambam. So the smag, which is an acronym for Sefer Mitzvahs Gadol, he's also one of those that lists the 613 commandments. The opinion of the smag is that this Sifrei that we just quoted is not a proof at all. Although his opinion is close to the Rambam's opinion, Mikol Mokim, nonetheless, yesh beineim chiluk mashmausi. There is a difference between the Smag and the Rambam. There is a significant difference between them. His opinion is close to the Rambam's, but there is a significant difference. When it comes to an optional war, kasav asmag Rambam, then the Smag writes just like the Rambam. We cannot make peace with them unless they accepted the 7 Noahide commandments. Then we can make a treaty and so forth. And then when it comes to the case of the beautiful woman, the non-Jewish woman that the Jewish soldier found at war, Kosav, the Smag then wrote about that. If she did not wish to convert and become Jewish, she accepts upon herself the 7 Noahide commandments, and then the master, the soldier, sends her free. Hare shesoiver karambam. So behold, the Smag holds like the Rambam. The koifin b'milchemes hareshus. We do force people to accept the 7 Noahide commandments in an optional war. And we also force the Yifas Toyar to accept the 7 mitzvahs. If she doesn't want to convert and become Jewish, we can't keep her as a wife, but we force her to accept the 7, and then we send her home. But nonetheless, here's where the difference comes. Rambam. The Smag did not write in the same language as the Rambam. That conclusion the Smag didn't write. The Rambam writes that the Fastoya we give her an option and the chance to accept all the commandments and to convert and become Jewish. And then he keeps her as a wife. If she refuses, then she accepts the Sheva Mitzvahs, and then we send her free to go back home to her non-Jewish family, non-Jewish nation, go back to her father, go back to her husband, whatever. And then the Rambam concludes, and if she refuses to accept the 7, she's put to death. Smag doesn't say that. Smag does not conclude that you kill the Fastoyar. V'daitoi, in his opinion of the Smag, the Vadai koifini Fastoyar l'kabel Sheva Mitzvahs. Of course we force the Fastoyar, the woman, to accept the 7. V'im tesarev l'kaimam, and if she will refuse to keep them, Tidoin beveistin, she shall be judged in the Jewish court. And of course she shall be put to death for transgressing them. But in a legal system, through a court, through, like any other non-Jew. But he doesn't go as far as the Rambam and say that kill her because she refuses to accept the 7. No, she doesn't. She refuses to verbally accept the 7. All right. But as soon as we see her transgressing, then he agrees that she's put to death formally. Whereas according to the Rambam, anyone who doesn't accept the 7, boom, kill them. And this opinion of the Smag is like the Ravid and the Tosfos, which will be explained further. Kloimar. What this means to say is, Hasmag loimeid, the Smag learns, that this law of killing all the males of a nation in an optional war, not one of the 7 Canaanite nations, it's not because of the 7 mitzvahs. It's because it's a detail and it's a specific rule in the laws of war, how to wage war. Hashem gives us the rules. The Rambam has a set of laws of war, so everyone agrees there's rules of. So according to the Smag, there's a rule when a Jew goes out to war in Milchemes Reshus, in an optional war, to kill out all the male. It's not because they refuse to accept the 7 mitzvahs. From here, according to the Smag, there's absolutely no proof that we, the Jewish people, should force just a plain old Ben Noach, like the Fastoyar, or like a slave that we've acquired, or like a regular non-Jew just walking down the street. L'kayim, to keep the 7. And if they don't accept it, kill them immediately. No. Ali Kabbalah Levada. The Smag doesn't agree that they are put to death for merely not accepting to keep them. He agrees that the penalty for a non-Jew who transgresses any of the 7 is death, but not that you kill him for not accepting to keep them. And this is the meaning of the Talmud in Avodah Zarah 26b, like we quoted. Akum, a non-Jew, she'ein beinenu bein milchama, where there's no war going on between us and them. Ein ma'alin bein meiritin. We do not bring up, nor do we take them down. We don't help nor harm. So from the Talmud, he uses that as support, that he says, in other words, we don't force them to the extent that if they don't accept, if they refuse to accept, we'll kill them. No. We have a mitzvah to force them. And if they transgress any of the 7, it is a capital offense. And the Beis Din, if it could, kills them. That's all true and he agrees with the Rambam. But not with this detail that if they refuse to accept it, kill them immediately. He says, no, that not. We do kill them if there is war between us. So again, that's because it's part of the warfare. That's part of the rules of war. That's not because they're not accepting the 7 mitzvahs. Top of 34. And it's not because they are refusing to accept any of the 7. Avodah Zarah Sham. And like the Tosfos there in Avodah Zarah 26b says, V'chein mashmos asmag hesin memches. And likewise, this is the implication from the Smag in his positive commandment number 48. Uve'emes, and in truth, pashtus apasuk l'man asher lo yilmedu geimer koi al shiva umais denemar koidim. So actually, Sir Rabbi Weiner says that the simple reading of that verse, where it says, so that they don't teach you to go in their corrupt ways, is referring to what it says right before it. It's about the 7 Canaanite nations. It's not referring to the optional war against far-off cities that are not part of the immediate Canaan proper. Makar noisaf humidin yifas toyar. An additional proof for the Rambam, which would be the third attempt to explain where the Rambam gets that a non-Jew that merely won't accept to keep the 7 is to be put to death, is from this rule of the Yifas Toyar woman. So again, the Sifrei writes on a verse in the book of Devarim 21:14, V'shilachta l'nafsha. The verse says, and send her free. That's what it says in the Yifas Toyar story. Says the Sifri, and don't send her back to her idolatrous home. Don't send her back to her house of worship where she came from. Send her free linafsha for her own life. Kloimar, meaning if she refuses to accept, she doesn't want to become Jewish, fine. So then she's supposed to accept the 7. And if she refuses to, so if she doesn't want to become Jewish, you said send her free. If she doesn't want to convert and become Jewish, send her free, but according to the Sifri, but not to go continue to be an idolatrous person. And since he can't force her any longer, wait a second, what could he do? According to the Sifri, he can't send her back free to be an idolatrous person. Now, he's no longer her master, so he can't treat her like a shivcha, like a maid, and he can't sell her, right? If it came to this point, he must set her free. So what is that? So what does the Sifri mean? So in other words, if she doesn't accept to keep the 7, he should kill her. That's how the interpretation would be. So again, we have a situation of a person. It's not the time of war. The war is over. He took her home. The war is finished. She's been sitting in his house now for 30 days or for 12 months, whatever the case is. And now it's to set her free, and the Sifri explains, but not to her. What do you mean not to her? You're setting her free. She can do what she wants. That obviously means that either she needs to accept to keep the 7, and she vows that she will not worship Avodah Zarah, and if she refuses to, she's to be put to death. All right, so basically, we've attempted to bring the source for this very extreme ruling of the Rambam, that why and how could it be that if a person simply refuses to accept the 7 mitzvahs by Noach, they are to be put to death. So again, this is the Rambam's opinion, and it's an individual, independent opinion, different than others. Even the Smag, who seems to be going along with the Rambam on everything, but not with that conclusion. And then the next piece is going to explain the Ravid and the others, what they hold. So until next time, wishing everyone well and success in keeping and studying, and the main thing is, of course, to observe and to promote the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach in good health, and no one wants to be killed, and everybody should live and be well and serve Hashem and keep the 7 and see to it to make this world the perfect world and bring about the complete and total revelation of Mashiach now.